Mercedog did not exceed expectations this season. However, he still has a lot of upside. He's a pending RFA. What will his contract look like now? We have a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Elliott scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed him. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play-by-play announcer, Devils writer for Pucks Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. Another day goes by in which the New Jersey Devils still have not signed their next head coach for the upcoming season. Hoping for something to change within the next few days, especially since Memorial Day is right around the corner. We'll see what happens, but it seems like the Devils are inching closer to making that announcement. We've been seeing some things on social media from Kevin Weeks, from other NHL media personnel that is teasing the Devils discourse a little bit, but for the time being, that head coach spot is still vacant. Well, we're not going to talk about that for today's episode. We're actually going to talk about Dawson Mercer. Some people have mixed emotions about Dawson Mercer just based on how he played this past season because he took a little bit of a step backwards compared to the season prior. At the conclusion of this campaign, he finished with a career low in points, albeit he's only been in the NHL for 3 seasons. In the first segment, I will talk about my expectations heading into the season for Mercer, and we'll also talk about his stats and compare him to some other Devils players. Then in the second segment, we'll play some sound bites courtesy of exit interviews from last month and Mercer reflecting on his season. And I'll tell you guys my expectations for him going forward and how I think his role should be with the Devils, because I've been hearing some people say that Mercer should be brought up in trade discussions because if the Devils are serious about shape-shifting their roster, maybe you include him and a few other players in trade talks. I'm against it, and I will explain my reasoning why. And then in the third and final segment, he is a pending RFA. And people are wondering, what will his contract look like? How much money will he take and for how long? I think that's the biggest question. So I'll talk about that to round out today's episode. Going into this season, my expectations for Mercer were pretty high because, as we all know, during the historic 2022-2023 season for the Devils, he played a vital part in that. He was on a top line of Nico Hischier and former Devil Tomas Tatar. And those three went on a tear for the Devils for the first couple months, because I remember when the Devils first acquired Timo Meier, there were some discussions as to which line would Timo Meier play on. And Mercer, Tatar, and Hischier were performing so well that you could not split those three up. I would say that they were one of the hottest lines in the NHL. And remember, the Devils were kind of struggling during the winter months, particularly in December and early January. And once Dawson Mercer got it going, an X-factor piece, that really turned around, I would say, the season just a little bit, because the Devils were still in playoff position, but they were spiraling just a tad bit. But Mercer really snapped them back to reality, or he played a big role in that. But when looking at his stats from this year compared to last, once again, he didn't really take a step forward. In 82 game appearances, he had 20 goals, 13 assists for a grand total of 33 points. If you need some sort of comparison, during the 2022-2023 season, 82 games, once again, 27 goals, 29 assists for a grand total of 56 points. And then his rookie year, 82 games played, 17 goals, 25 assists, 42 points. When we look at his stats compared to other Devils players, I just mentioned the 20 goals. He was 6th on the team. 13 assists, 12th on the team. Points, 33. He was 8th on the team. Just a fun fact for you, Eric Haula had more points than Dawson Mercer in 6 less game appearances. Andre Palat had 2 less points than Mercer in 11 less game appearances, if you need that sort of reference. Face-off win percentage, 44.9%, ninth on the team. Power play goals, 4, seventh on the team. Offensive point share rating, 1.4, 10th on the team. Defensive point share rating, 0.7, 17th on the team, giving him a point share rating of 2.1, which was 20th on the team. Plus minus rating, second last, just above Timo Meier. He had a rating of minus 26. I talked about how I had high expectations going into this season for him is because, once again, he was performing really well last year. And I thought he would be sort of like a fringe all-star type player because I'm like, he found a groove. It seems like he's found a rhythm. I said, if he gets off to a good start, then I think Mercer can definitely be an underrated star type player for the Devils. Of course, I was not anticipating for him to represent the Devils at the All-Star game, but I was sort of thinking like a lesser version of Jesper Bratt because, as we all know, Jesper is one of the more underrated players in the NHL, and he finally got his break by replacing Jack Hughes in Toronto for the All-Star game festivities. But I thought Dawson Mercer could slide into that role just a little bit more. Like, he's not going to get much league-wide attention, but he's still going to be vital for this Devils roster. And his slow start this season, I would argue and say it was a lot slower compared to last year. I don't think he scored his first goal of the season until the Devils were dealing with some injuries, particularly with Jack Hughes. But once again, similar to last season, once he gets it going, he's a very solid player. And once Tyler Toffoli was dealt to the Winnipeg Jets, I've alluded to this in prior episodes, but particularly him and Timo Meier, their roles changed and you saw more production from them because 20 goals is still very impressive if you ask me. But what's even more impressive is that Dawson Mercer, and I guess this is why he gets the nickname Merce Dog, he's just an absolute warrior because he has not missed not one single game, whether it's for injury or being a healthy scratch, whatever the case might be. Mercer has suited up in all 82 games up to this point in his career, and hopefully he can keep it going, sort of like the Iron Man on this Devils roster. Knock on wood. But Mercer was asked about this during exit interviews, and here's what he had to say about keeping his body healthy.
In a season where there were plenty of injuries, you were one of the few that played all of those games. What did you put in to make sure your body was ready, you were physically ready to go for all of those 82 games throughout the year?
Yeah, I think it's something I focused on my full career since I've been here. I want to be a guy that can be put in the lineup every game and be relied on that he'll be ready to go. And it's important, I try to play the game smart, don't put myself in those situations where things can happen. Prepare, make sure you're, ready for the game. And when you have things going on, you take care of it and just make sure you're ready to go.
Mercer, alongside with Luke Hughes, Alexander Holtz, Kevin Ball, and Jesper Bratt, were the only players to not be impacted by the injury bug that was making its way throughout the Devils locker room. And he answered as to how he keeps his body healthy. But I think another factor that plays into any professional athlete avoiding injury is just luck. And I hate to use that word, but that's what I've heard, whether it's an NBA player or an NFL player. Injuries are just a part of the game. And if you can go your entire career without dealing with a major injury, you are very lucky, especially since you're playing best of the best. You're playing in the top leagues and all the mileage that's added onto your body. It's quite impressive. And I definitely don't want to take that away from Mercer because he is a warrior out there. And I think that's one of the reasons why you can't make him a healthy scratch, despite sometimes not really having that much of an impact for certain games. But he always plays hard 100%. And he fits the system for New Jersey. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next segment. But before we continue, I want to tell you guys about FanDuel because I want to see you guys make some extra money. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Please remember to gamble responsibly. And I would bet on the Minnesota Timberwolves for possibly winning the NBA Finals this season. I love Anthony Edwards, and I love that he knocked out Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. Some revenge for us Lakers fans. All right, let's talk about where Dawson Mercer can grow his game from here. But before I give you guys my thoughts, here's what Mercer had to say when asked this question last month.
Your third season, where have you seen your own growth this year?
Yeah, I think just trying to be that more overall better player. As a young guy, there's a lot of aspects where you can just add on little tiny things that'll make you a better player, and overall it makes the bigger picture a lot more. So I think just all those aspects of, getting to the net, playing fast, being on the D side, all these little things add up to the end of the game. And when you look at the end of the year and you focus on next season, it's a fresh start to get back right at it.
Okay, Mercer had a down season. That's obvious. But so did a lot of other players. And I definitely don't want to condescend Mercer in any which sort of way, because I still think he's very vital on this Devils roster. And if he's just put into the right situation, into the right position, then Mercer can do a lot of great things for this Devils roster, whether it's playing on the top six, the bottom six, whatever the case might be. And during his exit interview, he was asked, which position is he the most comfortable playing? Because as we all know, sometimes he's put at center, sometimes he's put at winger. In my opinion, I think Mercer is better suited as a winger, so that way he can position himself to try to clean up the loose change. And this is something I'm going to talk about momentarily, but Mercer was really good, like I said in the first segment, with Hischier and Tatar. And who's manning that line? It was Nico Hischier, the captain. And I think that's what Mercer really needs to do moving forward. And I know he's capable of playing center, but I think he's just better utilized at a winger position because he can play a little bit more free. He likes to play fast. He likes to play hard. And if he can find himself some openings, then he has an absolute sniper, if you ask me. He has a really good shot. And I think that can definitely help him in more ways than one. And something else I want to factor in when discussing his down year is that the injury bug may have not impacted him personally, but it did impact his game. What do I mean by that? Well, as we all know, the Devils were just plagued with injuries, and one of the players that got the worst of it was Dougie Hamilton. Hamilton missed about 75% of the season. And Bill Spalding and Ken Danico talked about this on air. When you're missing someone like Dougie Hamilton, it definitely leaves a big impact in more ways than one. Because as I've said in prior episodes, I think Hamilton has one of the best slap shots in the entire NHL. Even if he doesn't score, he knows where to locate it, and that helps someone like Dawson Mercer or Timo Meier, once again, collect the loose change in front and finish. That's where Mercer's game is best utilized, and that's why sometimes he can be dangerous on the power play as well, because he's hanging in front of those open areas and he can clean up the mess. But when you're missing someone like Dougie Hamilton, that impacts someone like Dawson Mercer's game. It sort of sets off a chain of reactions. And if you have Nemitz or Luke just ripping slap shots, no one's going to fear that. And this is something that I've been talking about for both those young defensemen, which is they need to work on their shooting a little bit more, because I would say that they're good playmakers and they definitely know how to get their name into the column by getting assists, but they're not going to fear anybody with their slap shots, with all due respect. And this is something I've also been talking about in prior episodes, which is the inexperience on the Devils' blue line will cost them if they do not fix it. And that's why you need someone like John Marino or Jonas Siegenthaler or Dougie Hamilton. So while we're on this subject, I think the Devils, if they're looking for a defenseman, look for someone who's not only gritty, but is not afraid to rip it from the point. And while he's not looking for the goal, he's trying to set up his teammates and create more scoring chances, because I think Dawson Mercer can definitely benefit from that. And that's something that I want people to take into consideration. I'm not saying it's the only factor, but it definitely plays a big part. Another factor, like I talked about in the first segment, once Tyler Toffoli was out of the picture, Dawson Mercer saw his role increase. And I talked about it when Toffoli was first acquired, that I was anticipating for Mercer's stats to go down just a little bit more, because Toffoli takes priority in that case. So I would say once the Devils get healthy and once Mercer is playing winger, in my opinion, I think he will definitely have a big impact in more ways than one, and he'll rebound, which is why he should not be in trade discussions, if you ask me, because he adds more depth to this Devils team. And one of the reasons why the Devils were so successful during the 2022-2023 season was because of their depth assets. That was on full display when Eric Haula was showing up late in the year and during the playoffs. Or Michael McLeod, he had his big moments. Depth is so essential for any team to have a legitimate playoff chance, because that's what makes a lot of these teams so dangerous, because they don't just have to rely on their star players. They have a lot of other players that can impact them in more ways than one. All in all, I know people might have mixed emotions on Dawson Mercer just based on how he played this season, and I get it, but the one thing I have to say for Dawson Mercer is that he has got to get off to a better start. If he can get off to a better start, he will be a lot better. Trust me. And if he is put into the right position, he will be a lot better. If this team stays healthy, he will be a lot better. I have not given up on Dawson Mercer, and I don't think anyone should. And quite honestly, his down year might actually play into the favor of New Jersey, because he is a pending RFA. But the question is, how long are the Devils going to re-sign him for? And the multi-million-dollar question is, how much? Okay, Mercer was asked during exit interviews how he's been handling the contract discussions since he's a pending restricted free agent, and also his thoughts on New Jersey in general and what the organization means to him. Take a listen.
Dawson, just early thoughts on your upcoming restricted free agency, and is that, I imagine, something you want to get handled as quickly as possible?
They take care of all that, to be honest. I focus on playing hockey. It's something that I really keep that out of it. So, to be honest, with playing a game a few nights ago, I would love for whatever would happen, but they take care of it. I really don't know.
How much have you enjoyed your time here with the Devils, and what kind of promise do you see in this entire group, healthy group?
Yeah. You talk on it every season. We love it, the young, the competitive, the skillful, fast team that we have here, and I think every season we show that we're a team that's obviously going to grow together and be that group, and it's exciting to be here with such that young, talented team. So I'm happy to be part of that, and I'm excited for it for sure.
Away from the game, away from the stuff on the ice, what's the significance for you to be a member of the Devils and to be a part of this community that the fans really do support?
Yeah, it's great. I've been saying it ever since, and when you get drafted by an organization, it's a proud moment, and I've always been proud to be a Devil and play here. So they believed in me, and that's why they took me, and I believed in them. So it was pretty special to keep on playing every year like I've been doing, and whenever we can come here to the Rock and play a game, and it's a great day for us.
I think it's safe to say that I don't anticipate Mercer to be going anywhere, and I always enjoy talking about pending RFAs because it's a little confusing. What could potentially happen to these players, because it's they're not UFAs, but at the same time, it doesn't mean they're going to be on the roster come next season. And I talked about that same situation with Yegor Sharangovich, in which I said there's just no room for him. There's just no role. And I think he's better utilized somewhere else. And now he's thriving in Calgary. And unfortunately, the Devils got the short end of the stick for a Tyler Toffoli deal, unless we see what they do with those 2 draft picks. But digressing a little bit, Mercer's contract is definitely going to be a big question mark. And I did some research, and courtesy of my colleague over at Pucks and Pitchforks, Marcy Rubin, she wrote an article and said last summer, anywhere between $4 million and $6 million per year seemed realistic. Now the realistic range may be between $4 million and $5 million. As Nick Detail of Pucks and Pitchforks, our fellow colleague as well, recently suggested 3 years, $4 million annual value would be a fair deal, meaning his total contract would be 3 years, $12 million. That might be a little low for what he's worth, but it shouldn't be surprising to see this go to a team-friendly route. And I think that's absolutely correct, because for Mercer, it's just he had a little bit of a down year, and teams might pick up on that. And I think the front office might pick up on that as well. And now this would be a decent investment for them, because I just listed you all the factors that might have not gone Mercer's way. You're going to get a new coach who might utilize Mercer a lot better. The team's going to be healthier. And Mercer still has a lot to showcase. I mean, 20 goals this season, that's definitely not a fluke. And what he did the season prior, not a fluke either. And I think he's a very smart hockey player. This might be a decent investment for New Jersey, and I think they're going to capitalize on it. And if Mercer ends up improving his game, that's another steal for Tom Fitzgerald and company, because remember, Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, if you want to argue and say Timo Meier, all of them are on team-friendly deals. Trust me, Meier would have been paid a lot more by another team out there. You best believe it. Jesper Bratt, same way. We know the situation with Hischier and Hughes. They signed their extensions before they really started to elevate their game. And I think the same could be said for Mercer. If he signs on that dotted line this offseason, which I'm anticipating for him to do, and he really improves his game and he grows similar to what he alluded to in the second segment, Mercer is going to be a solid option for the Devils, whether he's on the top six, the bottom six, first line, second line, third line, whatever the case might be. If he's just given that decent sized role and all the other factors and the chips fall where they may, Mercer is still a very good player. And I'm excited to see where he can potentially take his game. But let me know what you guys think. What would you sign Dawson Mercer to? And what were your thoughts on this past season? Yes, it was a bit of a down year, but I think it was a down year in general for the entire Devils team, which is why they are not in the playoffs for right now. Leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on a podcast streaming service, hit me up on my personal X page app at TreyMatt4 or the show's X page app at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. Continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day in New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening once again.